No, not
You gotta
no.
stay for it.
Although it does feel like that.
Pretty mellow.
I'm Paul Gillies, and I'm here as, I don't know what I'm here for, as a municipal attorney. I've been a municipal attorney for almost 40 years. And I have had very little experience with the Public Service Board. Only in the last year and a half have I come on behalf of 3 or 4 towns. I guess I would premise this by just saying that as a municipal attorney, one of the worst things that the Supreme Court has ever said about municipalities is that, and this is something they've repeated again and again, as they tell towns they don't have authority or can't have a say, and that's that they're mere creatures of the legislature created to perform administrative functions. And that's been followed up by disrespect in the form of de novo hearings in the zoning board, so that what happens below in the town DRB and the planning commission is really irrelevant. If you're an appeal or a tax appeal to this court or to the state. And time again, what I see is the diminution or the dilution of municipal power and the disrespect that's shown by legislation. No offense to any legislators here. And I think that it's...
I don't take any offense to that at all.
I think that we have a disconnect here. Of course, in this particular venue, we have a collision between 2 fundamental values: energy conservation and the right of the public to have something to say about it. And I think there has been a disconnect and a misbalance that's occurred. I can tell you from personal experience visiting here that I've had the feeling I'm not really welcome. Of course, I'm new to the process. I don't understand all the acronyms, and I don't know when to move this way and that way in rhythm with the parties. But the towns that I represent and the people I represent who are officials in the town have been very embittered by the experience they've had here, because they don't feel not just that they don't have a chair, but they don't feel that they've been listened to. And that's not, I'm not blaming the board. I mean, I think it's a legislative problem, and I think this act you passed recently is a very small and very tentative step toward correcting it. I think it over-invests in the Regional Planning Commission, again to the detriment and disrespect of the town. You charged the towns a few years ago to decide by zoning how to site telecommunications towers when it was a raging issue. But you don't trust them to do something like this. I absolutely believe that towns should not have a veto power over a gas line or an electric line or something like that. You know, Starksboro shouldn't stop a movement from one end of the state to another. But the siting of solar ridge lines, to the extent that we identify those goals as overriding any municipal public interest, I think we do a disservice to them. One other thing, when we say town, we often think select board, we think planning commission, but town's made up of people, and people have strong feelings about this, very strong feelings, and they do not always have certainly they have no role to speak of in the regional planning process, and a diminishing role in the development of town plans, particularly because most towns do not vote a town plan by the electorate. It's accepted after a series of hearings, which nobody attends, and the selectmen adopts it. So we're missing an important role here. We have more than just 2 or 3 power bases: the decision maker, the PSB, the towns, and the developers and landowners. But we also have this other voice, which is never heard from, because frankly, over the course of the last 75 years, as reflected in many pieces of legislation, we are continuing to dilute and ignore and not treat with any respect the voters themselves. Act 46, I think, is a dilution of voters. It's not the worst they're doing in Virginia to keep voters out of the general election, but it does not respect the traditional principles we have in Vermont of direct democracy. We have lost that because we're too efficient. I've been working for the last 4 years on a book that tells the history of the courts of Vermont, a judicial experience. And a rising conclusion that I'm making is that the law, whether it's the courts or the legislature or the executive, is too busy, too overworked, too troubled by the involvement of people, and they do constantly take away what we think of as our birthright, which is our ability to attend town meeting and have an impact on what we're doing, and to have an impact on the things that affect us in a town. So, that's one other thing. I think it's really interesting. I pulled down the Newquist book on state government, Vermont state government, 1966. And I don't know what got them going, but there's a sentence in there that says that up until now, the Public Service Board has been to protect the people, but lately it seems only to favor the industry. 1966.
1966.
Appreciate
Yeah. Well, this has been an experience.
So, I hate to ask this question.
Cut my head, I'm not afraid.
No, it's not.
He's afraid. You're not.
And I don't know the answer. Okay, but are we talking? Are people talking when I keep hearing that the people feel that they're not listened to?
Yeah.
Are they not listened to, or the decisions are not? The decisions aren't the ones that they want. And how do you discern?
Well, I sit here, and we have people to talk, and we testify under oath, and the board's, usually the hearing officer sits up there, listens. Then when the decision comes out, well, we just don't seem to have any clout. We don't have, there's sort of and they were there. But
So not in finding the fact at all?
well,
not
I
even
mean,
that,
I'm not
or-
saying it's,
yeah.
it's
I know
fair.
there's
They'll
gonna
give
be
you a
some.
fair rendition, but I don't feel as though there. And again, I don't. It's not the board's fault. I think that's you had this. What did you call it? Alternate regulation or something?
Alternative regulation.
Alternative regulation. I mean that's the problem. It's the system,
Well-
and it's also the insistent on by the part of the legislature to make this 90%, 10-50 thing, which is. Can that really be more important than democracy?
Were you involved in the alt-reg?
No, I've just read about it.
Oh, so it might be helpful to read another article. Some of that was, to my mind anyway, I felt a little.
Well, I think in fairness,
I am
okay, so I'm going to weigh in a little bit just because I'm all professional and well-respected in this field. I think there are improvements to be made to alt-reg to provide more input, because it is set up by the legislature to be a negotiation between the department and the utility, and then presented to the board. And people do have a right and can participate as parties in that process. It's just really hard, and I get that. So we're working on ways to try and improve that. That said, I think alt-reg is not fundamentally a problem in the sense that it is provided a vehicle by which we can get into the utilities stuff on a regular basis and fix things and adjust them along the way. So I would ask that we, anybody who's thinking about this, let's improve the system, but not throw the baby out with the bathwater. In terms of the siting issues, though, that you're describing and the respect for towns, I think we're in a growing period here, and hopefully this committee and the work that gets done on this and the work that gets done in terms of the substantial deference to regions and towns as they develop plans, will start to acknowledge that this has become a lot more like a land use decision than a generation decision, and it ought to start to reflect that. That's and I know from talking with from being engaged in this process that it is different in the sense that it is it's litigious, it's adversarial, it's structured that way, like all legal proceedings are. That can be a problem for the Chris Campanys of the world that try and come in here and we're surrounded by 30 lawyers and they're like, I just want to say this, and we ought to, this being Vermont, we ought to figure out a way to make that work for people.
I just have 2 points like that. First of all, we ask an awful lot of municipal and regional plans, and we make them schizophrenic by saying we want you to dream and we want you to aspire. And by the way, we also want it to be enforceable and direct and specific.
Yeah.
And so we were, and I've confessed it's a mess to do that. And but I don't know. I guess I'm thinking that the process it's become too efficient in a way, and I think that's an unfortunate step, as I was saying before. I don't want to repeat myself.
So this is going to get out there, but this is what's lacking in a lot of this discussion. And that is that the traditional creators of electric power, the big base load generator, is going away. And it's going away for a variety of reasons, not just as if it was insignificant impact on climate, but it's economical. We're realizing that the loss of power and the cost, dollar-wise and environmentally, to keep creating hundreds, if not thousands, of miles of transmission lines to transport big power from places where we don't have to see where the power comes from, but we get to use it, is going away. Nuke plants are closing, not because of the Tony Kleins of the world. I'd love to take the credit for the closing of Vermont Yankee. I felt totally unlistened to by the Public Service Board in the creation of that plant. But that went away purely on economics, and they're closing around the country purely on economics. And the power so far of the future, where we're going to be getting to keep the lights on, is going to be closer to home.
Wouldn't that then justify a greater respect for the people who live in those places where it's being generated? Since what happens in Niagara or up in Canada is out of mind, out of heart.
Correct.
So that we should have more sensitivity. I have an idea for legislation. I don't know if you'll ever be interested. We've had, over the years, we've developed this sensitivity to costs, so we always have a fiscal impact study, right? I suggest every piece of legislation ought to have a democratic impact study that would address what it does to the voters' rights and to the town's rights as well. So that at least it's there before you. So when you do something, you know whose box you're boring.
Good.
I think that's an excellent line.
And also you want to see home rule.
Limited
budget.
home rule. Yeah, limited home rule. I think we really do have it. When the towns invent charters, there's very few times the legislature says no.
That's right.
It isn't. You can.
Unless it's Burlington, I know.
Well, no, Burlington doesn't deserve anything.
I will not take that home.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Paul.